We'll start the town council meeting. Councilmember Wall, you are participating remotely. Do you have a statement to make about your remote participation?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am exercising the child care exemption. I've been instructed to state that at the beginning of the meeting, which I'm doing now. And I think that's all I need to state.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Jennifer, will you take roll?
Councilmember Alberish,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Gold,
Here.
Councilmember Wall. You're on mute.
Just need you to unmute Jen with a yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mayor Domkowski.
And yes, I'm here, of course. I think with Jen, we go to you for Mayor Pro Tem. Will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a full agenda tonight, but we are going to open public comment for anyone that wants to speak on any matter not posted on the public agenda. You're invited to do so at this time. Please note, of course, that we cannot undertake extended discussions, although we can refer things to staff for a placement on a future agenda. The communication period is limited to 5 persons, 3 minutes each. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment on an item not on the agenda tonight? And I see no hands up in the Zoom room. So I think we will close public comment and we will move to
Town
manager report. So Jason, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Woodside Town Council. This is Jason Ledbetter, Town Manager, giving my staff report. So based off of engagement with the Town Council at the last meeting, I worked with the Town Attorney and we sent a letter off to the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office about our failed negotiation attempts for a contract. We have received a proposed contract. We received that on July 3rd. I did meet with the subcommittee today and we have established our pathway forward and some negotiating terms that I will attempt to begin negotiations with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office tomorrow. On August 12th, staff will be meeting with Mark Dolan of CERT to start the conversation and planning effort to mock an emergency with staff and volunteers by the end of this year. This is a housing element deliverable. In an opportunity to see where we fail under volunteer emergency response, our goal is to fail ultimately through that practice so that we can improve. The 4th of July Junior Riders Rodeo was a success. I was in contact with the Mounted Patrol over the holiday weekend, and they're going to work on getting us some material for the July e-newsletter. I attended the Circulation Committee meeting on 6:30. I am working with the chair and vice chair as well as the Public Works Director on how we can get some requests and some processes on how the Circulation Committee brings things forward for council addition into the CIP. I did meet with Waymo after the last meeting to discuss their expansion plans and better understand those expansion plans for service into Woodside. And currently they don't have any expansion plans to provide service of pickup and drop off in Woodside, but that their map now includes Woodside as possibly coming through our town in some fashion to get from point A to point B. So we will more than likely see Waymo operating through Woodside, but not necessarily servicing Woodside, and they don't have expansion plans for our community that they were willing to share with me at this time. On 6/25, I met with the interim town manager for Portola Valley and discussed the possibility of future partnerships. I left all my contact information. It sounded like they were very close to making an offer to somebody who would then be engaging me over shared resources. The comm survey will be live today. I believe it's live now. A news flash will go out. It will be in the July e-newsletter. It will get posted on Nextdoor. Every address in Woodside will receive a postcard notifying them of the survey. And we're also emailing every volunteer of our committees with that survey to engage, and we're requesting that they sign up to the e-newsletter. And then finally, just some housekeeping. I will be bringing an item forward more than likely in September to just kind of discuss the final closeout of the rest of the year for town council. We do currently have a meeting scheduled on a holiday, 11/11. We have some meetings that I'm just not sure how this body has worked in the past that are very close to Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. So I just want to advertise those to the council and make sure that you still plan on meeting on those days, or if you want to make alterations. And that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from council for Jason? Any questions from the public on the town manager report? Moving right along. Everybody's here. for
Sorry,
the
I
main
don't know.
event.
Sorry,
Jen,
Brian.
yes.
I'm not sure if it's showing in my hand. Or just quickly following up on the meetings. Jason, are you going to follow up with us separately on the dates of those meetings that might potentially conflict with, vacation schedules and whatnot?
Yeah, my plan at the moment is if I can't, I'm going to shoot for this next meeting in July just to bring to you guys the proposed rest of the year's calendar for town council. But if I can't make that meeting, the first September meeting, I will be bringing forth the scheduled meetings to discuss, as one of them definitely falls on a holiday, so staff is not here that day. And then to better understand if you still want to maintain those meetings or if you want to make alterations.
Okay, because you
In
mentioned
September.
11/11, because we typically do an August recess, right? So that caught my eye.
Yeah, so Veterans Day is November 11th, and that currently is scheduled for a meeting, but ultimately staff it's a holiday. So that's the big red flag at the moment. And then from there, a lot of other agencies won't have meetings in the week of Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'm just not sure how you guys have handled that in the past.
Typically don't meet, but we can work on that. Yeah.
So if we skip the 11th, we would take the month, November would be off essentially.
Yeah, so there's some difficult decisions that I think you guys have to, based off the history of business in the town.
Maybe we'll find a way to throw one in between so we can make. Yeah. But we'll come back to everybody with that. Okay. All right. We're going to close down town manager report. Thank you, Jason. Consent calendar. All items on the consent are considered routine and will be approved by one roll call motion unless a request is made to remove an item for further discussion. Are there any items on the consent that anyone would like to remove? Small consent tonight.
Move that we approve all four, or all two items.
All two would be great. Oh,
Second.
yeah. I'm sorry. I don't. Kim, Ms. Hanson, you raised your hand. Is that on a consent agenda item?
Yes, please.
Which consent agenda item did you want to discuss?
Sorry, now my phone is ringing. I'm sorry, I don't have the number, but I have a question about the utility undergrounding item at 28K. The PG&E expenses now that we have solar, the Kite Hill expenses, and a general question about if we do auditing or analysis on some of these items, please.
So that's, I think you're talking about item one, a register of demands. We can attempt to hit some of these here, or obviously we can do it one-on-one. Are there specific issues that you want to call into question tonight, or is it more general process around those charges?
The specific item I'm just curious about is with the expense that the town has incurred for the utility undergrounding. I don't know if that's been an item that the public has much awareness. I know we've been having to be inconvenienced with the disruption to roadways and trails and sidewalks. So I'm wondering how this expense relates to the whole project, please.
Are you talking about page 8, the top of page 8, NV5 Inc.?
I have no idea. It's the utility undergrounding charge of $28,000, please.
I'm prepared to answer that.
Great. Over to you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Jason Ledbetter, Town Manager, and Yazdan, the Public Works Director, is here as well. But ultimately, currently, the town is embarking on a master plan document that will investigate how we can underground utilities in the future. And so we're just embarking on the planning process at the moment with that $28,000. There's no plans specific at the moment, or this does not apply to anything currently happening in our community. Yes, Don, is there more that you wanted to add to that?
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you recall, this is this was, as town manager mentioned, a master plan for undergrounding our utilities that the council approved, and we just received a draft report that we're studying, and the goal is to bring it before the council for your review and a study session, but this is the invoice for that report, basically.
Very good. Did that answer your question, Kim?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Brown, you had a motion you wanted to make on the two items?
I move that we approve items 1 and 2.
Second.
And
Councilmember Albertish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Domkowski.
yes, thank you. Moving on to old business, item A, we have a resolution on the appointment of the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Town Center Area Plan. Jason, I'm going to hand this off to you here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the clerk is pulling up just a brief slideshow to walk through the staff report. And so just reiterating this evening is that there is one requested follow-up action of the town council this evening, and that is the finalization of the appointment of the Citizens Advisory Committee, otherwise known as the CAC for the Town Center Area Plan, otherwise known as the TCAP. So at the last meeting, there were some decisions that were made, and you guys approved the boundary map for the Town Center Area Plan. You approved the staff recommendation of the 10 members to be placed on the Citizen Advisory Committee. And then you tasked Vice Mayor Gold and Councilmember Wall with bringing back additional CAC recommendations to this very meeting. And so tonight, we are looking for a finalization of that CAC, which will take place by a vote of this body. Next slide. So just some very brief history here ultimately. So the Town Center Area Plan update, this is nothing new. The Town Center Area Plan first originated here in Woodside in 1970. Town Center Area Plans include policies and guidelines related but not limited to buildings and structures, landscaping, signs, lighting, land use, circulation, motor vehicles, and pedestrians. Why is Woodside embarking on this? Well, the Town of Woodside Town Center Area Plan update will explore land use, economic development, parking, circulation, the general vision for town center, etc. And this is also a deliverable required within the recently approved housing element. Next slide. So the role of the Community Advisory Committee serves as an advisory capacity throughout the area plan process, acts as a sounding board for ideas, provides input and feedback, and the CAC will make recommendations to town council, and town council obviously has the ultimate decision-making authority. So the community engagement overview will be, the objectives are to encourage very broad participation, ensure a collaborative process, facilitate transparency, prioritize local values, and deliver a comprehensive vision. And this whole process is going to take us at least about 18 months. The community engagement activities. So we're going to have the 4 pop-ups, we're going to have community workshops, and really just drawing attention to once the CAC is seated, we're expecting that there will be 4 meetings that each CAC member will have to participate in. Next slide. So this is the engagement kind of roadmap right here. You can see that there are 4 CAC meetings listed here on this chart, and one of them will kick off pretty much at the tail end of this month or the beginning of August. And to the next slide, please. So just reiterating tonight, you guys are here to finalize the selection of the CAC and ultimately wanting to bring attention to a clerical mistake that transpired here in the agenda. Ultimately, there were 5 listed CAC recommendations from the subcommittee, and they're on the left. And on the right, we believe there is a discrepancy with the subcommittee, and I've been alerted that ultimately, possibly on the right is the correct listing. You'll notice that there is one particular person that is removed from the listing on the left and replaced with someone else on the right. This is Andrea and Carly, and both of them were notified of this clerical issue earlier today. But ultimately, I will kick it back over to the mayor to clarify that we have the correct 5 people listed.
Thank you, Jason. So maybe we'll kick it for a moment to members of the subcommittee to just let us understand maybe a little bit of color and what is the right list, and maybe what were the rationales at some level, so that we just have a starting place. Jen,
Yeah.
I see your hands up. You want to take us through your views?
Yeah. So Paul and I met early last week. I think it was on Monday. Had a really productive meeting at town hall. Considered a number of factors for the Citizens Advisory Committee, including experience, town familiarity, community engagement, planning expertise, whether or not the individual would bring a new perspective or the perspective of somebody that had lived in Woodside for quite a while, their reputation for positive collaboration. And we ultimately landed on the 5 individuals that you'll see on the right of the slide. There was a clerical error, but it's been corrected. And so the subcommittee is indeed recommending Julie Sequeira, Carly Rivera, Vanessa Johnson, Daniel Drucker, and Steve Patrick to be added to the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Gold,
Yeah,
any additional thoughts?
yeah, I wanted to, I'm not so sure I would characterize it, that it was productive. I was not that happy with the result because it didn't meet a lot of the standards that we had talked about at a previous meeting to get representation for each district. You may recall that I was the person who actually made that suggestion, that I was very alarmed that there were 2 districts, Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Aberish's districts, had 0 membership on the CAC for any reason whatsoever. There were no voters in their districts represented at all. And I felt actually quite strongly that the reason I selected 5, and I think I spoke about it for several minutes when I made that suggestion, that we would pick a person from each district. That was not shared by my fellow member of the committee. And the reason I wanted to shed this light is because I've received 25 emails and lots of phone calls, and why that's kind of not what I said, and it doesn't represent that. And so I do think that it needs to be addressed, but I want to do so kind of as carefully as I can and sort of preserve the deliberations that we went through. So there was a disagreement whether it should be 1 person per district, which I actually felt, as I said, strongly about. And I thought it would be a pretty easy decision. And you also may recall, because I mentioned this as well, that there was an individual property owner who was overlooked. I think it was termed an oversight by staff. And before council acted on that, I said, why don't you let the selection subcommittee try to resolve that, because I thought that this person might fit into one of those districts as the district individual for that. Maybe not, but I thought it was certainly worth a discussion. The committee was unable to get unanimity on those two issues. And we just had a different approach to this. I think some of them were easy. In the case of Dan Drucker, who's here tonight, he was the only applicant from Councilmember Brown's District 3, is that right?
That's correct.
District 3. Sorry, I get the numbers mixed up. And so he was an easy choice. I also thought that Councilmember Abersh's District 5 was an easy choice too, because there were only two applicants. One of them was unable to be selected due to their membership on the ASRB, which would constitute a quorum whenever they got together. And so it was difficult to do that, but I was certainly leaning in that direction. Again, we could not reach consensus on that. Then when we get to the mayor's district, there were some excellent choices there. And again, we could not get to consensus on the individual choices. As I said, I don't think it's appropriate to go into individuals there. But I can tell you that just based on the volume of the emails that we received, and I think council members received a lot of them, I received even more than that from other individuals in town, simply because it was at such disparity to what was represented, I think, my characterization, that I think it's worthwhile addressing. And I think it's one of the reasons when I was corresponding with the town manager that probably the way, I mean, this isn't necessarily the list I would come up with, but it's the list that the committee came up with after almost 2 hours of deliberations, which I found frustrating. But I think that one of the things that we can do is the town council, in my memo to the town manager, is free to accept, reject, modify this list however they seem fit. They can strike a name, they can add a name, they can add more names to it if they want. And so I think that some of these oversights, if you will, or names that I think should have been included on this but were not for whatever reasons, I think that they can just be, I would certainly support adding them to this. So I mention this because I know that there's a lot of concern about certain individuals being included or not included in certain districts not having representation. I think that the council is certainly free to add names and make those accommodations. It was my desire that the selection subcommittee do this, but we were unable to get there. And the council can do it tonight, which is ultimately where I left it when we adjourned that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Mr. Brown?
I have a question. Is the recommended corrected list, does it now incorporate somebody from each district?
It does not. And the main, so the list here, you could see Andrea Bunt was on the list that I provided because I actually thought she was the one that was selected. That was on a draft. I think that you provided back on Thursday morning to me at least, well, to the subcommittee. I responded immediately that was correct. That was at least my recollection. And I have no issue if Councilmember Wall, why would I have an issue? If it was really Carly Rivera, I'm perfectly fine with that. Why would I not be? I want it to be correct. But yes, the list on the right does not include somebody from Hassan's district at all.
But the one on the left does?
No,
Neither
neither does. And it includes 2 from Councilmember Wall's district. And, keep in mind that I think I have the most, but in the current configuration that we have, there's 2 from Councilmember Wall. I think I have 3. You have none.
Of one?
No, you have none before we met. You would have none. Hassan would have none. And I think you had 1 or 2. So anyway, so this would actually increase Councilmember Wall by 2. It would increase me by 1. It would increase Councilmember Brown by 1. It does not add any. So you're still unrepresented on the CAC at all, which again was, I think, antithetical to the whole reason behind this having this 5-person.
My point of view is this is a town-wide project, probably the most important thing we'll do the next couple of years. I can't imagine that we're gonna leave one district unrepresented. To me, that's gotta be one of the core principles.
The council can address that, I think,
Yeah.
separately.
Okay, so we have a little bit of cleanup to address here. Could we ask, I think maybe this will go to you, Councilmember Wall. The role of Miss Bunt and Miss Rivera, is that for the single purpose of representing the school district? Or are
Huh.
they on the list, or would they were considered for different reasons?
So that's an interesting question. So, I mean, I think I wouldn't really look at it that way, honestly. Paul and I spent the better part of 2 hours meeting at town hall, discussing all the applications, going back and forth on who we thought would be the best candidates, taking into account a number of factors, district representation being one of them, but also, everything that I mentioned when I talked about the recommendation that we ultimately landed on. And it was a holistic recommendation. It wasn't really about the individuals that are on the list. I mean, each one of them is really strong and brings capabilities and positive attributes that are going to be really valuable for the Citizens Advisory Committee. It was a clerical error that, unfortunately, Ms. Bunt was included on the list rather than Ms. Rivera, because coming out of that meeting that Paul and I had, we had aligned, and the recommendation of the subcommittee was Julie, Carly, Vanessa, Daniel, and Steve. So it's not a comparison between any individuals. It was holistically those 5 individuals who we agreed were the best candidates. And I will say, I mean, in my mind, I mean, it's interesting for me to hear Paul's characterization of it tonight. I mean, it was definitely a negotiation, and he was able to successfully advocate for a number of individuals that show up on this list, and I was able to advocate for some individuals that show up here. But ultimately, we were able to achieve a consensus, and in consensus, we weren't able to hit every bucket that we would have wanted. For example, I would have really liked to achieve district representation, but we just weren't able to get there looking at everything holistically and taking into account all of the attributes that we wanted to see on the Citizens Advisory Committee. So, we did walk out of that meeting with a recommendation. This is the recommendation of the committee. So, I certainly wouldn't want to engage in comparing individuals to individuals, because that's not what we were doing.
Right, thank you. Yeah, we're in an unfortunate position because of this. So perhaps we will work on this during deliberation.
Before you,
Yeah.
I wanted to just address something. So the 2 who I advocated for were default candidates. There was no competition for them. So, when you look at Dan Drucker, I did advocate for him, but he was also the only applicant from District 3. In District 4, one of them was a commercial interest, and I think we did agree, by the way, that commercial interests were already overrepresented, which is one reason I wanted to try to address it with the committee and not just add to another one, which is where I think we're going to end up doing. But one of them was Bob Sullivan he was disqualified because of his membership on the ASRB. So I was left with Steve Patrick, which, by the way, was a wonderful position to be in. I actually think Steve Patrick is probably the single most qualified person, not only in this group, but maybe in the entire town. I mean, he's a 17 years planning commission chair, and I mean, he's a leading architect in town. But there are others who I think share similar qualifications, and hopefully we can get them accommodated as well. But I thought that having district representation, the whole reason for this was to make sure that each district was represented. We did not accomplish that goal. The secondary reason was to make sure that commercial interest could have been accommodated here, and we did not accomplish that goal. So I consider those 2 very significant. I mean, to me, those were the 2 principal objectives of this committee. and those were not accomplished. And so I mean, as I said, I don't think that this was the list, but it was the best that I think that the committee could come up with under the circumstances. And my points being that the town council is free to accept, reject, modify, or do what they wish to do. Hopefully that answers.
Well
your
said.
question.
It does. Thank you. Any other questions for staff or the subcommittee? Okay, and the only one I had was really about the commercial stakeholder, which I think, having read the staff report with a recommendation and talked to that individual and also heard an endorsement from the mayor pro tem, I'm comfortable not having to pursue that line of questioning. So we will close public council deliberations and now hear from the public. I think one of the things we're trying to do here, though, is just we don't want to respond on a case-by-case basis on relative merits of different candidates. We can do that during council deliberations, so we'll certainly hear what you have to say, but we're very unlikely to address relative candidacy during public comment with each individual speaker. So I think with that, we are open for public comment. If anyone would like to approach the mic or raise your hand in the Zoom room, we look forward to hearing from you. Mr. Middleman.
Good evening.
Evening, sir.
David Middleman, 280 Grandview, District 5. I had a whole speech planned about District 5 representation, but feel that that's unnecessary to go through.
Thank you.
I understand that the subcommittee did not select me due to legal constraints regarding the appointments of members from the ASRB. The town council subcommittee noted that adding another member from the ASRB would create a quorum issue as 2 members had already been appointed. I do see the potential legal issue, but I struggle to see the practical one, as both meetings would be noticed and agendized. While I respect their decision, if the council is in favor of my appointment to the advisory committee, I am more than willing to resign from the ASRB forthwith. If allowed, I am also happy to stay on the ASRB until the town can find a suitable replacement or until the first TCAP meeting to minimize any disruption to the ASRB. My resignation would resolve any potential legal conflicts and allow me to represent District 5 in this pivotal process. And I had some more things, but yeah, that's basically it.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Middleman. There is an ASRB quorum issue. I think what you've heard is we feel there's a glaring omission, and we certainly appreciate your commitment all the way down to the level of potentially resigning your appointment to participate. So we appreciate hearing that. So thank you. But what you're offering is resignation from ASRB in exchange for appointment to represent District 5.
Correct.
Okay.
Because I feel that that is the more important place for me to serve. I will also point out that when we were here 18 months ago, the ASRB only had 3 members.
Yeah,
With my absence, they would have 4.
good point. Thank you. We'll go to the Zoom room. Ms. Bunt.
Hi, yeah, it's Andrea Bunt.
Hi.
I'm part of the awkward clerical error, and I just wanted to raise my hand and say I was super excited about, getting the email that I'd been potentially selected for the CAC. And so if there's room for, Carly and I both, I think, a bunch of opinions would be highly valued here. And I'd love to still be a part of it, but also completely understand if it's not and if it doesn't work. But would love to volunteer my time and efforts. And I have lots of experience in regarding urban planning issues. So I think I can bring a lot of relevant experience to the table. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bunt, and sorry that we are not our finest moment, but you are certainly a highly qualified person. We'll talk about that in deliberation. And another one in the Zoom room, Ms. Hanson.
Hi, thank you very much. I apologize, I was not able to attend the June meeting. So my basic question is for the way I understand it is the intention is to have really robust participation throughout the town to be able to consider the expertise and the opinions of many citizens. So maybe someone could please help me to understand how these individuals would interact with the consultant and with other members of the public who would just participate in the meetings outside of this advisory committee. Thank you very much.
I can take a stab at that, and maybe I'll hand it off in a moment. But the theory was that the optimal way to build a committee would be to include a group of stakeholders, group of town experts at the top of their field at various committees that we have. And then in the last meeting, we also thought that in order to augment that, we would bring in a group of 5 at-large community members who would bring other complementary skills and be accretive to the process. So the idea of bringing basically those groups together for a public-private partnership in a controlled way, in a committee that would be manageable, was what we were thinking. In terms of the second part of the question, which was that, help me out on this.
Yeah, I believe Kim is looking for what's the difference between just the normal
public
member of the
process.
public engaging the TCAP versus being on the CAC.
Right. And so, and we emphasized this with the consultant during that meeting, Kim, that the public would be a big part of it and be able to comment on the various agenda items as we go through. It is an advisory board. It is not a steering committee. So it is part of the process, but it's just important to realize its role versus perhaps the role that it's taken in many individuals' minds over the last couple of weeks. It's an important committee, but the public also has a very strong voice in the process. Any other public comment? Ms. Hanson, your hand went back up. Is that are you looking to comment on what was just said?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Will the public be allowed to attend all of these meetings? And when you say they can interact, do they interact in a live fashion? Do they interact by it seems to me it seems to me that it is a little undefined exactly how you'll actually get robust participation in a town of over 5,000 people if you've cherry picked only 10. So maybe it's hard to answer at this point, but I guess my comment is how critical it would be to have people, even if they're not selected for this committee, to actually have a robust role in this process. Thank you.
Yes, so the public would participate. All of the town committees function under Robert's rules. So much like a council meeting, there will be public comment on each issue. Obviously, depending on where you are and how the consultant decides to run that meeting will play a role. There are certain committees here that almost engage in a participatory conversation, but here at the council it's more formal, right? We have different declared sections for public comment and deliberation and so forth. So I think when you start getting a committee that's 15 or 18 or 20 or wherever this thing ends up, you really need to have some structure around it, so it's likely to follow Robert's rules, and the comment will follow it'll look a lot like what the town council looks like. That's our expectation. We will see how it comes out in reality.
I just want to add, this is Sage, the plan director. There will be also other opportunities for members of the public to engage as part of the process. So the CAC is scheduled to meet 4 times, whereas there are other public workshops that will be invited for a wider, well, I should say the public will always be invited to the CAC meetings as well as these other public workshops will provide additional ways for the public to engage. Also, individual members of the public can always set appointments and meet with planning staff. There are also different events in which the consultants will engage the public that may have not otherwise thought to participate. So showing up at different events where they may be able to provide opinions at different steps in the process.
Thank you, Sage. Any other public comments in the Zoom room or here in the hall? Okay, hearing none, we will close public comment and move on to deliberations. Is there anybody that would like to take a stab at some of this?
Take a stab.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, number one, I still think strongly that we need to have representation from every district. And to me, that would mean we need a District 5 representative on the committee. Okay. Two, I know that we have a stakeholder that was overlooked, and I think that should be corrected. I know we're talking about Sue Pletty, and I think she deserves, given her stakeholder status, to be included. There's one other person that's probably the deepest knowledge of this town and the architecture in this town that I think should also be included, and that's Steve Lubin. Whether we have 15 or 12 or 20, I don't think it's going to make a difference. And I think we want to start with what is representative of the town, what do we need, the inputs we need for this committee. That's my recommendation for this committee.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any additional thoughts of Ms. Bunt and Ms. Rivera?
I don't know either woman, so I can't really comment on their qualifications.
Okay. Yeah, well, we're closed, Thalia. I'm sorry. I just lectured Ms. Hanson on Robert's rules. I better stick to my guns. Any other? Yes, Councilmember Abarish.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a bit disappointed just that District 5 was not included. I think if I was on a subcommittee, I would try my best to, I would try my best to take into consideration other districts and the good of the whole town. And I think it's really important to have representation from District 5. And I know personally David and Caroline. And I think either one of them would be a great addition. I think that David, I think, is also a great benefit to the ASRB, extremely knowledgeable. Caroline is, I believe she was, I think she was born in Woodside, or at least she was raised in Woodside. So she grew up here. So second generation Woodsider, and she still lives here and in my district. So I think she would be a great addition. That would be my vote, would be to add her to the committee. I also support adding Sue Paletti. I feel like she should have been included in the first place. I think that was an oversight, and I think it's an easy one to fix. And last but not least, I absolutely support adding Steve Lubin. I think, I appreciate everything he's done for the town. I think he's extremely knowledgeable, and I 100% support him being on the committee.
Thank you. Do you have any issue if we were to add both candidates that are in question on the list right now versus one versus the other? I don't know how we're going to judge if we were not on the subcommittee, is why I'm asking.
I would probably ask Jen Walls, because I think they're both in her district.
Okay.
And if I'm fine having even 19 people on the subcommittee. I mean, it's a bit much, but
yeah. Okay. Well, that's maybe a good segue. Councilmember Wall, do you have views on where to go from here?
Yeah. So I am sort of feeling like we're not at a disadvantage by including more people on the subcommittee. I think having, like a multitude of voices and different stakeholders is really a benefit. So I would be fine. I think it was very gracious of David to offer to resign from the ASRB. I'd be fine adding him or Caroline. Also fine including Steve Lubin. Also fine including Sue Paletti, whether we include Sue as a commercial stakeholder or as a resident stakeholder. That's fine by me. And I'm fine, going with the recommendation of the subcommittee, but also including Ms. Bunt as well. I think she would bring some great experience. So, I mean, I think it's wonderful that we have so many qualified and interested people interested in serving. And so, I'm pro inclusivity rather than elimination.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Pro Tem Gold, any additional thoughts?
I do. I wanted to address some of the issues that were brought up here. Before I start, I just wanted to thank David Middleman for, I mean, that's a pretty generous and unexpected offer from me. It's hard to, that's quite a sacrifice. And I just thank you for doing that. That's you're making, at least from my perspective, it a far easier decision, and one that obviously the committee couldn't get there. The reason we're doing these remedial steps is because the subcommittee was unable to do it. We're now doing it here as a council, which I'm happy to do, but it would have been nicer, I think, if we did it on Monday. I wanted to address Andrea Bunt. I appreciate the accommodation that she's making here. I actually do feel pretty strongly that it should be one or the other. I recognize that they're probably both qualified, but I think before we give one district a fourth or fifth helping, we should make sure that each district who's unrepresented has their first helping. And I would like to see District 5 represented, of course, and I'm certainly prepared to make a motion on that. One of the things that came up was, and I think that Kim Hansen, who, by the way, was considered, even though she didn't have a formal application here, I did want to point out that there were two people who were not named, Kim Hansen and Jeannie Petrick. Kim actually expressed an interest from the microphone, but never did send an application. But I wanted to assure Ms. Hansen that we did consider her as a formal applicant. And we did the very same thing with Jeannie Petrick, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, who missed the deadline by, I think, a few minutes, but we did still consider her. And came up with the slate of candidates that you saw there. One of the things that came up that the planning director alluded to, and it's something that Ms. Hansen brought up, was public input. And during the meeting that Ms. Hansen missed, I think, I had asked the gentleman from Good Cities about how this was done, and there is no chair of this committee. It's being run essentially by this gentleman, the consultant. And the point being that I think public input was somewhat limited. And that's the reason why I felt very strongly, and the reason that I made the suggestion that each district needs to be represented. And what was left out here is not only is the input from the workshops and from canvassing the town council members, but that's why it's important to have somebody in the district, because your neighbors can talk to you. And I think that that's important. Steve Lubin, David Middleman, a lot of these people, Steve Patrick, a lot of the names on this list, they know their communities better and more intimately than we do. And so I think, rather than having to rely on people to attend a workshop where there's limited amounts of time to speak and get their feelings, you can lobby that person from your district and get your thoughts into that document. That's why I think it's important. That said, I think that the numbers are pretty big too. I think we heard from that consultant that I think the number 12 or 13, sort of the ideal number, if I recall correctly. I think I do. We're now at about 15, and I think if we make these additions, we'll be at about 18 or 19, which I think starts to become a bit unwieldy. And for that reason, I'm for the slate of candidates, the corrected slate, if you will, with some additions to it, which I'll discuss here at the end. I'm certainly favor Sue Paletti. That was an oversight. Oversights cannot go unnoticed or uncorrected. So I think that that's one that, in the committee's absence of doing that, the Sound Council certainly can. And I think Steve Lubin is another one of those that I certainly support. So I'll turn it over to the mayor before I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to break protocol for a minute because we have a District 5, clearly an interest in District 5 being represented. David, you're here in person. Ms. New is online. And Councilmember Abarish, I don't know how to proceed other than asking if there is a preference within your familial existence for one of you to take on this role versus the other.
Which new is online, Kristen or Caroline or Kristen?
Says Kristen.
We never know.
We don't know.
It's true, it's either me or the other.
Usually says your name.
It says, yeah, and she's on,
That's
so.
It's a very hard question to ask in a public room.
I know.
I would ask, because Caroline and I did discuss this, and it was unclear why, if there was a legal issue for me, why she wasn't the default choice by the subcommittee. And our speculation was that it was because of the neighborhood of Big Tree Way, or Big Tree, is actually split between unincorporated San Mateo County and Woodside. And it was just unclear to us if that was the actual reason why she wasn't on the list. No. I have a desire to do it. I know she also has a desire to do it. My desire comes from a sense of service, of wanting to serve the town in the best way that I can with the skills that I have. That said, I do recognize that District 5 would have more representation if I were to stay on the ASRB, and Caroline would sit on the town area plan committee. One of the other things that was in that speech that I didn't say is the town has 2 area plans. There's one for Skylonda, and it is newer. It's only 40 years old, but we might want to do this exercise again. I really can't stand here.
Can't say.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not going to do that with my sister-in-law. I'm
All
sorry.
right. Well, that's probably wise for your household.
Smart man.
Okay. I think I personally would default to you as the district leader to tell us what to do. Oh, hi.
I just have one other thought, though. You have pointed out that some other districts have more than one, potentially up to 3 to 4. If you only add one of us from District 5, that's 1. If you add both of us, that's 2.
Wow. Talk about going all in. Wouldn't want to play poker against this guy. But again, just to drive home the point, there is a quorum issue with ASRB appointeeism. So we have a high-class problem. We've got a lot of highly engaged citizens, a lot of advocacy, a lot of folks that are interested in participating in this. It is actually a real positive. It's an embarrassment of riches for sure. I know everybody on the council always tries to do what's right, and our job is to be as fair and accurate as we can, not be discriminatory in any way. And when we don't get it right, through oversight or a real-time governance decision-making process or some connectivity or turnaround time, it's not a perfect moment, but we do endeavor to get it right ultimately. And I'm personally very supportive, extremely supportive of Sue Paletti as a stakeholder. Mr. Lubin to bring the historical context, maybe help us understand all the errors we made in the past as we tried to do this. I'm looking to Councilmember Abarish for a recommendation for to fill a District 5 spot. And I think what I've heard, which I agree with, because I can't make a decision sort of medias res. I can't jump into the middle of this, and I wasn't part of the subcommittee. So I think what I've heard is people are generally all right with, not everyone, but I think there's a consensus around just including Ms. Bunt and Ms. Rivera, which I could support if that's where the council is. I understand that I understand, but this is not our finest moment right now. either. So I guess I would just, for a moment, yield the floor to you for maybe some future direction on District 5 representation.
Yes, thank you. And I think I really like both the candidates from, from my district. And it's they're still both neighbors and I like both of them, but if we could have them both, that would be great. I do like David on the ASRB. I think it's a huge benefit to the town to have him on the ASRB and doing that. So I feel like it would be a loss to have him do it. I think it would be so my recommendation would be to go with Caroline New, and just so we still have good representation on the ASRB.
Any further? Go ahead.
And I would also say I agree that with the points made that there may be some overrepresentation in one district, and so I would give it to Council Member Wall to select. I'd say between the two, people, and she has so. But I've been swayed on that issue.
So we have two folks that are saying one candidate only between the two. Okay. And Jen, you chose one, so it's really a 3-2 on this particular issue, right? Just to reiterate. Or did you say you'd be happy with both?
Oh, I'd be up. I mean, look, in my mind, it's not a choice, right? Like there was a clerical error, and the recommendation from the subcommittee was for Ms. Rivera. I think Ms. Bunt would be a fantastic addition to the subcommittee. I think she's very qualified. I would be really happy to have her on the subcommittee as well.
Any further deliberation?
Yeah, I would just like to say that, again, I think that before we give one district a fourth or fifth helping, we need to get, I think that I mentioned this in the subcommittee meeting that when we didn't represent District 5, that I suspect that Councilmember Alberish would not share those same thoughts, and it's clear that he doesn't, that, people don't like being eliminated or unrepresented. And I can tell you from my personal experience on this council over the last 3 years, I've sort of seen that. And I think that when you're on the outside without representation, it's a far different position. I would certainly default to having 2 people from District 5 before I would entertain even another one from District 1. That is, I'm happy with the 2 that are on the list, but I don't think we should have 3 when they already have 2 on the list currently. So there's 2 already. We're going to add 2 for sure tonight. I think adding 3 and bringing it to 5 when District 5, which is the exact same size district and has similar issues, doesn't have any yet. So I would certainly support that. And I'm certainly prepared to make a motion whenever the discussion's done.
Let me check for any further comment from council. Okay, seeing none, yeah, we would welcome a motion to expand the subcommittee to include whatever additions that individual would like to make.
So one, I wanted to make a motion that we accept the corrected slate of 5 candidates, which includes Carly and not Andrea Bunt. That's not a slight on Ms. Bunt, who I think is eminently qualified, but as I mentioned before, I think the district is already represented generously. And I would also propose adding 3 additional candidates to the CAC, Steve Lubin, Sue Paletti, and I'm going to say David Middleman. I mean, if there's a difference. By the way, I know that that if we don't choose Kristen or Carol, I guess it's Caroline who's the candidate. She's certainly going to have ample input with Mr. Middleman. So I hold him in very high regard, but that would be my choice. I'm perfectly fine either way, but I'm just really taken that that's quite a sacrifice that he's willing to make, and I wanted to honor that. But maybe swayed either way. But that's my motion: is that the slate of corrected candidates plus Sue Paletti plus Steve Lubin plus David Middleman.
I'd second that.
We have a second. Are there any other motions that anyone would like to make?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to follow up, Brian, on your comment. Like, again, I think it's really unfortunate that we're having to even discuss individual applicants here, but we are in the situation that we're in. And I'm really pleased for the most part where we're landing here, but wanted to just offer a counterpoint to some of the comments that Paul just made, which on the one hand, I hear what you're saying around district representation, but Brian, I did hear you say in your deliberation that you'd be open to also including Andrea. I'm also open to that. I hear the arguments around, that would result in District 1. I think having one additional representation on the advisory committee. But I just wanted to remind us that, going back to the beginning here, back to the original staff recommendation, this wasn't about the districts, right? This was about finding the best qualified candidates to serve on the advisory committee. District representation was just one factor in a larger set of factors, including experience and many other things. And so to hone in on the fact that District 1 would have one additional community advisory council member versus the other districts, I feel like it's a little bit of a red herring. And we have somebody that's shown up tonight that has demonstrated her interest. And I just would, respectfully ask the rest of the council to consider whether or not, despite the clerical error, that we should include her as well.
Okay. Did you want to make a motion to that effect?
I would. So the motion that I would make would be to include the corrected slate of community advisory
Well, check all the
council
motions
members.
first.
Oh, sorry. What was that?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We're listening, Jen.
Okay, so it would be the corrected slate plus Steve Lubin plus Sue Paletti plus Caroline New plus Andrea Bunt would be the motion that I would propose.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. And well, can I still make my own motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask Gene how to handle this with all in.
So before he makes a motion,
You
what
wanna
you
do-
have is a main motion and a substitute motion. The substitute motion would be voted on first because it's a broader motion. If it fails, then you would go back and vote on the main motion.
And what happens if Councilmember Aberish makes a similar motion to the main motion, but substitutes out one person so we have the exact same broadness, if you will, from the main motion?
So
This
if
is just
he,
fun for us all to learn, maybe.
so if he makes a substitute motion that includes the same number, but perhaps different people, you would vote on the first substitute motion first. Then you would vote on the second substitute motion because both of those are broader than the main motion. If both of those fail, then you would go back to the main motion.
All right, we'll come back to you on that. Councilmember Aberish, did you want to?
Yes, I'd like to make a second substitute motion to appoint the corrected list and add Sue Paletti, Steve Lubin, and Caroline New.
I think
Sorry,
that's,
that-
I think
So that's the same as my motion.
that's the same as Paul's motion.
Yeah, or the same as,
New for Middleman.
I'll second that one.
And we have a second on that. Okay. I think that's all the motions we're going to entertain. So take us through it, Gene.
You would go first to the substitute motion that was offered by Councilmember Wall because it is the broadest motion, broadest substitute motion.
Okay, and that motion is corrected slate plus Paletti, Lubin, Middleman, Bunt. Jen,
oh, I think you said Middleman.
did you say new or Middleman, Jen?
I said new.
New, sorry. Thank you for the correction. Wait, one more time.
You want me to make my
Corrected
motion
slate,
one more time?
Paletti, Lubin, new, Bunt added to the list.
Yes, it's corrected slate, Lubin, Paletti, New, and Bunt would be my proposal, my motion.
Okay, and that was originally by Councilmember Aberish.
Councilmember Aberish?
No.
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Councilmember Gold?
No.
Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Dombrowski.
Yes. Next motion.
That fails.
Next motion.
Okay, then we would
Yes.
go, to the Aberish motion.
Which is,
As I got it, it's corrected slate, Paletti, Lubin, new, correct?
Yes.
Jen?
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
No.
Councilmember Gold,
yes.
Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Dombrowski.
Yes. Motion, Lee, I don't want to steal your thunder, Jen. Did the motion pass? Okay, thank you all. We appreciate it. Sorry the sausage had to be made real time, but hopefully we got to a place that is as optimal as we can for government. So go on from there. Do you want to, we will break protocol for Ms. Lubin to give us an appendix statement.
No appendix. It's just a clarification and a question. Every other time you've had appointments, the applications have been included in the council packet. And this is a pretty critical committee. And I, for one, aside from Steve, was very curious to read who these interested people were. And the applications were not included in the packet. And I'm curious, I asked Jen, she was out of town last week. I was going to call Jason, but do any of you know why they were not included in the packet?
Well, I think what I could say is that they are all part of public record and we could have them available for your review, Jason, tomorrow morning. Would that work?
Yeah, if you wanted to come in, we could furnish those for you.
Okay, because sometimes I'm on the volunteer committee. Sometimes we go through those when we're looking for volunteers for other appointments that people have shown interest in
That,
participating in the town. It's useful for us, so.
that would be fantastic data mining. Thank you. Okay, well, moving right along. We have new business item B, which is a presentation from the Volunteerism Committee on Youth Civics Program. And I see three wonderful Volunteerism Committee members. Chair Moira, Miss Lubin, and hi, Tom. Nice to see you. Okay, who are we handing this off to? Moira, is it going to be you? All right. Well,
Hi, I'm Maura. I'm Maura Liam, Chair of the Volunteerism Committee. I'm assuming you guys have gotten a chance to review our outline for our proposed program. It was part of it's like within our jurisdiction because of or purview because of the original ad hoc committee that was formed. So this was our next project, and we worked hard to put this together using prior similar programs in Los Altos and Half Moon Bay to develop our own program. So if we're here to basically explain anything, answer any further questions you guys have about what we put in the outline.
it's great. Any questions from council? You know, I'll kick off. For both of my high school kids, I went in as a local elected to speak at their civics classes, and sometimes it was hard to get a high schooler's attention even. So I was curious about the curriculum for 3rd through 6th. What exactly,
Does it look like?
how does it, yeah, how do you get that child at that level of development to, I mean, even the high schoolers,
Yeah.
they don't even vote. They're
Yeah.
worried about who they're taking to prom relative to what I'm saying out in front of them. So
Yeah,
why, engagement with educators, how do we know that there's an interest or an appropriateness, if you will, for what you're
Yeah.
designing?
so so much of this came from my firsthand experience. My parents developed the program in Los Altos and taught it, and then I participated in it. So I have a lot of goodies from that, worksheets and examples to understand and put together our own version. But a lot of it is pretty simple stuff, just if you have an emergency and you're in front of the library, where do you go, or who can you call, or just pretty simple level things. Also just, what businesses are in town, and obviously some kids who are down here don't know as much about what's up, in Skylonda area. And so, a lot of it is just fairly simple stuff. And in terms of kind of what the mock town council meeting topic would look like, it's kind of along the lines of making it controversial enough to have kids take sides. So we want to put an ice cream parlor in, and we have to take out a bunch of trees to do it, and kind of like, what side of the fence do you fall on? And how do you kind of advocate for your position, and then go through a formal, meeting on it. But yeah, a lot of it's informational, and learning through kind of basic worksheets and having people come in. Obviously, who comes in will be a little bit more along the lines of like who's available. So whether it's, people from the fire department or the sheriff or both or whatever, that's kind of how we would structure the actual visitors to come in. So does that answer your question?
It's
Okay.
very cool that your folks did this already.
Can I
Yeah.
comment on this?
Sure, and then I'll go to you, Councilmember Wall. Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say, when I first came to the school and suggested a third grade read the Pledge of Allegiance, they invited me in to speak to the third grade class. And I spent over 30 minutes with these kids, and they are hungry to learn what's going on. And I think it's a great idea. And I think, I was eager to get it to explode it into other grades where they're looking at different issues, and they're all interested in what's going on in this town.
Yeah. And just to
I'd
kind
like
of,
them to know that.
yeah, and to just kind of instill it early, to have them take an interest in the town and know more about the town, obviously will empower them to kind of form their own opinions about the town, and, take some ownership over living in the town, and want to kind of take action and contribute to the community.
And I will just tack on to that. Councilmember Brown started this wonderful program that has sort of fizzled out, but the third graders?
Third grade.
Third grade would come in, sometimes as a group of 3 or 4, but they would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And it was a lovely community way to start these, to the degree that might be part of your program. We just throw that out there. He was asking me about it this morning, just a few hours ago.
Well,
Okay, Councilmember Wall, we've kept you on hold there, so over to you.
Yeah, no, I think this is such a fantastic idea. I was really excited to see it in the packet. My question is, I noticed that it's targeted to 3rd through 6th graders. Selfishly, I have a rising 7th grader, and I know this is something she would be so excited about. So I guess the question is, why just 3rd through 6th? Did you guys think about opening it up to say 3rd through 8th, or making it more broadly available? In particular, because, and I'll just say that, particularly for kids in the 7th and 8th grades, as they're thinking about going into high school and starting to take on more extracurricular activities, I could really see a benefit to having this type of programming available to 7th and 8th graders. So just wanted to hear if you guys had thought about that, and what your thoughts were.
I think when we targeted kind of the 3rd through 6th graders, we thought that in terms of subject matter, it wouldn't be like too simple for 6th graders or too complex for 3rd graders if you kind of have that range. But I mean, we're not married to the age range if you guys want to suggest we change it. But that's kind of where we landed.
Yeah, definitely not a suggestion. I totally trust you guys to come up with the best program, but maybe just throwing it out there for consideration. I think this is such an awesome idea, and I could just see this really becoming such a cool thing within the town of Woodside. And if there was room to open it up to kids in the 7th and 8th, I think that would be also very well received.
Okay. Okay, well, yeah. I mean,
It is a wide age cohort, so maybe I'm sure educators would lean in and give you some feedback on that last comment. Brass tacks costs? Staffing, who's running this? What is it? Is there an ask?
Yeah, so we're running it. We would like to get like a volunteer who maybe is like a social study teacher or something who would want to help, but otherwise the volunteerism committee would run it. And budget would be like if we wanted to provide some light refreshments like water and fruit or something to kids, but so probably something more comparable to kind of what arts and culture does on their first Fridays, but
Mhm.
did you have
Yeah,
another
no, that works.
question?
That's great. No, that's great.
Did I cover them all?
I ran a mock council meeting for some folks with a real issue, which was we held elections and we had uncontested elections. Should we have? There was a financial cost to doing that. But, it's an interesting one because you can take both sides about the transparency of democracy versus loss. Anyway, that one works too.
Yeah, I think third graders might like ice cream parlors better.
You're right. That's why I'm not an
I'm
educator.
just
I
kidding.
appreciate that.
But yeah, I mean, we'll come up with something good for them. That's a good one.
Any other pieces of feedback?
Do you know a day or time? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we thought 5 sessions once per week, and I think we were thinking Fridays. I think when we discussed it, didn't we said Friday afternoons, so like right before dinner type of timing.
Thank you.
Well, as the former liaison to the volunteerism committee, just thank you for all you guys do. You've been very, very active with the handbook revisions, and now this new initiative is, well, thank you
Yeah,
for all your
thank
work
you.
on our behalf.
I just want to say public thank you to Maura, who we go through the volunteer handbook together, but Maura went through it line by line and came back with corrections, so she did the bulk of the work, so.
Thanks, Talia.
We are well aware of lawyers and red lines on this committee.
All
So
right.
thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Appreciate it. I mean, are there any comments from the public before we? I think with that, we appreciate the presentation, and obviously we're here for feedback along the way, but you guys got it, so it's great. Okay, we are moving on to new business item C, a study session on safety-related issues tied to e-bikes and scooters, and this is going back to you, Mr. Ledbetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Woodside Town Council. So ultimately, council members Brown and Wall at different points in my short tenure here had requested a study session in regards to e-bikes specifically. And ultimately, it came to my attention when I attended the May Day parade here that the Woodside Elementary School was already investigating because there was a boom in ridership of e-bikes. And you'll notice this evening that you were handed a letter from the superintendent of the school who could not be here, but wanted to provide some input on this very topic. And so I just have some kind of guiding slides here. And so as an example, when I go venture out on an issue in relation to my job, I'm always looking at what is the problem statement, so that I can guide my solution to resolving what I consider to be the statement. And so I would just advocate that as the council engages this topic this evening, that you really land on that there's a problem, first of all, and that way you're seeking a solution to that problem. So I've created 2 problem statements that I believe really engage both council members' perspectives. And so the first one ultimately is that e-bikes use on horse trails creates an unsafe situation for both humans and horses. And so ultimately we're looking at rectifying e-bikes on trails. And then secondly, the increased use of e-bikes in Woodside can potentially create unsafe situations as the requirements to legally ride an e-bike, class 1 and 2, are not age restricted and do not require a learner's permit or the understanding of basic road safety. And so I think that that is another caveat to an issue from Councilmember Wall's perspective, is just the safety of these on the road. Next slide. So in tackling this issue, staff, myself, and Councilmember Wall attended a San Mateo County Office of Education meeting in relation to e-bike safety, where we learned about e-bike safety and the incorporation of what they call the 3 E's. And so education, enforcement, and engineering are the guiding principles that we've kind of set up this study session to look at this particular topic. And so education obviously is in-person training, educational websites, events that are specific to provide e-bike education. Enforcement are the new laws governing age restrictions, where bikes are allowed, safety gear requirements, any type of ordinance or municipal code enhancement. And then engineering is the infrastructure improvements to the road. These things take obviously generally substantially more time and cost associated with hypothetical master plans and then projects that actually change the landscape of the community. Next slide. So within the context of the staff report, there are some guiding questions that ultimately don't necessarily need to be answered, but are just there as prompts for the council to engage as they work through each of these topics. And so we've just thrown these prompts out there to you. So within education, should the town have a webpage dedicated to providing information on e-bike, electric scooter safety, as other agencies have done? Should the town partner with Woodside Elementary School to offer annual education and training for students interested in riding e-bikes? And are there other educational efforts that the town should undertake? Next slide. So with enforcement, we have, I think, a total of 6 hypothetical questions, and these are just guiding prompts for you to think about. You can create your own questions in regards to enforcement, but here they are. Should the town council consider an ordinance that limits the use of e-bicycles or motorized scooters on trails? If an ordinance is proposed, should it prohibit or impose regulations governing the use of e-bikes, motorized scooters? And if regulations are proposed, what types of regulations should be included, e.g. time of day, operational requirements, equipment requirements, and we're seeing in some instances age limitations are being created locally as well. 3, if regulations are proposed by ordinance, should those regulations apply to all trails, a specific type of trail, or specific trails? If specific trails only, what areas of town or types of trails should be subject to the new regulations? Next slide, please. And then the final 3 questions within enforcement. If an ordinance is proposed, are there specific safety, maintenance, or public nuisance concerns that should be addressed through the ordinance? If an ordinance banning or restricting e-bikes on trails is proposed, how should it be enforced, e.g. citation or other mechanism? And I just wanted to take the opportunity to point out that we do have 2 members of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office here this evening, specifically to engage this event and to answer questions. So thank you both for being here. And then finally, 6, if higher enforcement is desired, how does the San Mateo Sheriff's Office plan on facilitating that enforcement? So that's why these gentlemen are here tonight, to kind of give a broader perspective within the county and then the other areas that the county Sheriff's Office actually has a contract with, similar to Woodside, how they're tackling this issue in those communities. Next slide. And then within engineering, there are a litany of questions that you could hypothetically ask. We just have one on here. Is there a use of hypothetical trails that we should be looking at specific to e-bikes? But you can broaden this as well. Are there specific improvements that we would like to see on the road themselves or on our roads moving forward, especially when you look at the TCAP? Ultimately, we have a broader conversation. We've extended the right-of-way to include the front of the school. Should the TCAP and CAC be looking at this very issue or incorporating it into hypothetical engineered action items that would come over the next 10 to 20 years within the community? Next slide. That is all. So without further ado, I will kick it over to you, Mr. Mayor, to walk through the study session.
Thank you, sir. Questions for staff or our sheriffs? Councilmember Brown, I know this has been a big issue for a long time.
Yes, and again, thank you for your presentation and the information we got. When the Circulation Committee first asked you for a recap of what are the rules. And it strikes me as I go through all the information we've got, that, and particularly the elementary school is getting more and more riders. And as I recall, my kids, when they were elementary school, they were maybe 12, 13, maybe 14 at the oldest. And we're talking about 12, 13, 14-year-olds, potentially, if that's true, riding electric bikes. 'Cause there's no age limit on riding the bike. Am I correct? Some of the bikes? Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not looking at you as being, having developed the laws. I'm just saying, as the enforcement laws, there's no age restriction. If you see some kid riding an electric bike, you can't stop him because he's underage. That's correct?
That's correct, yes. And
How
I'm,
is- how
real
would-
quick, I'm Frank Del Porto. I'm the captain here
Okay.
with headquarters. And then I also brought Sergeant Newman. And the reason I brought Sergeant Newman is because right before he was promoted, he was one of your motor deputies up here in Woodside. So he's a lot more familiar with the traffic laws than I am, but I will answer the best I can, and anything I can't answer, I'll hopefully Sergeant Newman can answer.
Okay, great. I believe you made the presentation to the circulation committee. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. Assuming the kids are not 16 years old, they haven't gone through the DMV,
Correct, yeah.
all the learning there is about what are the rules of the road. How do you enforce the rules of the road in somebody who's never learned them?
Right, so the education would start at home and then also hopefully at their school. So the way I look at e-bikes is like your class 1 e-bike is basically a electric assisted bicycle. So anyone that can ride a bicycle can ride an e-bike. They're under, as long as they don't go over 20 miles an hour. So it would be basically the same as a student riding their bike to school, a regular bicycle. They could ride an e-bike to school.
And where are they supposed to ride the e-bike? Is it within the bike lane?
Correct.
And how do you would enforce it though, the same way if they ran through a stop sign?
Yep,
You'd give them a ticket
exactly.
of some kind.
We could give them a ticket, yes. I mean, depending on the severity, if they're, if they're with a large, pack of other kids and they're doing some really dangerous maneuvers or going through the intersection of Woodside and El Camino, maybe then it would, we would write them a ticket. If it's something less egregious, we would probably, it would be a, education. We would kind of explain to them what the laws are, what they can and can't do. So giving kids tickets is not really something we want to do. It's like,
And a big brother watching out.
yeah.
And have you seen a big rise of accidents among the e-bike users?
I have, in Woodside?
Anywhere?
In Woodside, I don't think, have you noticed anything?
No, not in Woodside, but we have seen some incidents throughout our contract cities involving e-bikes. Usually the issue is going to be speed related.
Is it a serious problem or just a problem to watch out at?
At this point, from what I've seen on the street driving around, I don't think it's been something to necessitate going above and beyond other than just our normal enforcement. And especially in Woodside, I haven't really seen the issues, say, up here in the town versus, maybe down by Woodside High and a lot of the kids going towards Redwood City. I've just kind of treated it much like other bicyclists in Woodside and see a violation, make a stop and either educate or enforce.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for sheriffs or staff? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh,
I will recognize you.
Could you briefly go over a lot of this is focused on trails and e-bikes on trails. Can you review again, what are our current regulations about the use of trails? I mean, we've got horse trails, we've got pedestrian walkways and things like that. Can you distinguish on those, between those or among those? And what can be done about an e-bike on them or a bicycle for that matter?
Well, I don't think I can answer the second part, but the first part I can. You have an ordinance that's been in place for a very long time. It's It's section 9604 of your municipal code, which basically says that trails are only to be used for the purposes to which they are dedicated. And so if you have a trail that's dedicated for just pedestrian, equestrian use, any type of bicycle is prohibited on that.
Okay. Any kind of bicycle,
Yes,
motorized or otherwise?
correct, any kind, because it would not match with the purposes for which the trail was dedicated.
And could I ask the captain or the sergeant, what enforcement do we do on that now, if any?
We would do enforcement, and I have heard of a couple times since I've been here in headquarters since last October. And I think I've heard, just from listening to the radio is, we have had at least one, maybe two complaints of people on bicycles on some of the trails. Have you heard of any?
Yeah, in terms of enforcement, I mean, a lot of the trails, if they're from the side of the roadway and we can see them, it'd be something we could address immediately. Other than calls for service, I'm actually unaware of any calls for service when I'm actually working. I know a lot of the trails are very well posted, stating their intended use. So, but if we were to get a call for service, we would send a deputy out there to check the area.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, we're talking about e-bikes, and then, there's a bunch of different classes of e-bikes, right? So if it's under, I think it's 750 watts, if it's under that, that's a different class of e-bike than the ones that are, believe it or not, there's a bike that's a Suron, it's 22,000 watts. It goes close to 70 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically like it's like a motorcycle, an electric motorcycle, and, anybody can go and buy one. They're not designed to ride on the street. You obviously can't ride them on the trails. I haven't heard of any issues, like especially Edgewood Park. We used to get people with, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but we used to get people that would actually ride their Kawasaki dirt bikes up there. And then we have a motor unit that would go up there and catch those people and then, arrest them. We'd impound their bicycle. But those Suron bikes that are like the really high wattage ones, we treat those like a motorcycle. So, yeah, we would impound the bike. We would, cite the person out for, violating the law. If it's just a person riding a mountain bike on a trail, maybe they didn't know that they were supposed to be there, which I know they should know. I would like to think that we would educate the person first. Maybe they didn't know that they weren't supposed to ride their bike there. They should have. And it's kind of up to the deputy's discretion whether or not they're gonna cite the person on the bike.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I actually have a friend who got one of those bikes. He
Yeah.
has a Kawasaki police cruiser type motorcycle too. Never rides it anymore because he said with that e-bike, essentially that really high powered e-bike, he can ride it anywhere, any place, park on the sidewalk, drive up to, and nobody bothers him because it looks like a bicycle. Although it does go 70 miles an hour, as you said. So Woodside has a big issue historically for as long as I've been here and probably as long as it's been around, at least in the last several decades, with regular bicycles. I mean, the Peloton and to me, those are issues that affect a lot of people a lot of the time. And I think it's very different than a single rider who happens to be riding on, in the Glens on a pedestrian trail, which is a little different. I don't want to get into the bigger bicycle, the Peloton issue. That's been a nightmare for us for as long as I can remember. So my question about enforcement is, Sergeant Newman made the point that if it's easy to get to them, if they're right by the roadside, it's easy to turn on your lights and they stop, and that's fine. If they don't stop, I assume you're probably not going to chase them. But I think a lot of this is happening where you can't get to them very easily, unless you're a motorcycle patrol, and even then, it's probably pretty difficult to get to some of those places on that kind of a bike. But I recognize that in Woodside, this is not a huge issue, but apparently it's becoming an issue for the elementary school, and I'm guessing that the safe trails to school and that sort of thing. Is it something that we should be paying attention to, or is this, are the other priorities just overwhelming this one?
I can, go ahead.
And also, I hate to interrupt Sergeant Newman, but if we have 10 people online, so I just want to make sure they can hear you with the microphone.
Yeah.
In terms of places we can't get to, generally we'll have residents call, and then if it's on a trail we can't access, there's going to be a place where they come out or go in. So based on a call for service, we'll address it appropriately. Like I said, the biggest thing right now, I think, has been education, and educating the schools, because I think a lot of the issues, it's a lot of these parents buy the bikes now for people, and they've now kind of just, the law is actually still trying to catch up, I feel. A lot of the laws that we're using to enforce are based from motorcycle laws from the 60s and 70s, when mopeds were a bigger deal than they are today. So the laws are in place, I believe. But the biggest things I would look for as on motor patrol would be, are they running stop signs or are they speeding? Generally, there's laws already in place and we can address it. In terms of the horse trails and stuff, I haven't seen the issue, but not to say that it hasn't happened or it's a one-off. In those situations, we'd probably do education, unless it's someone who's now riding in a group, or it's someone we've contacted before. I do think the laws are in place for enforcing a lot of these issues, and I think the two biggest things are going to be speed and then rules of the road, stop signs, and what have you. I think a lot of this could be helped by reaching out to the elementary schools, which it already seems like there's something already in place, because a lot of parents are buying these bikes thinking they're bikes, and then yet these bikes can do 20+ miles an hour. And, kids are going to be kids, and unfortunately just do what they're going to do.
Do you typically do any education at the elementary school? I mean, do you go over there and talk
I
to
can
them about
actually
it?
answer that. We haven't started yet. Our community policing unit is developing some curriculum. And I think that's coming out pretty soon. They want to target Woodside High School and the elementary schools. And it's not just us, it is, countywide. But like Steve said, the big issue is the parents don't know what bikes are legal, what bikes are not legal. Some of these bikes could, go over that 25, 30, 40 miles an hour, and they're lower cost. They're around, lower cost for an e-bike, they're around $1,500, but it goes all the way up to like $8,000 for some of these. I think they're called Surons, and there's a bunch of other models that are like that. But if we impound one of these bikes and it sits at the impound yard for 30 days, it's going to cost a lot of money for them to get it out. And I'm sure parents aren't going to be too pleased with paying the impound fees. So.
Okay, Councilmember Wall, your hand's been up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to pick up a little bit on the topic of speeding, because I know I personally have observed some concerning incidents of speeding with really young kids on e-bikes, and just talking anecdotally with other parents. I think among the school community, folks are definitely concerned, and I know Steve Frank wrote in, the superintendent of Woodside, expressing his concern around e-bike safety. And I think the sheriff, kind of one of the main focuses of concern is the speeding. And so I wanted to, it was interesting to me in the packet, I noticed that the city of Marin instituted a speed limit for bicycles on county maintained pathways at 15 miles per hour. And I just wanted to understand how that dovetails with Woodside's current speed. I'm actually not, maybe it says it in the packet, but I can't recall. Does Woodside have a speed limit on bikes? And if so, what is it? If not, would we be able to implement a speed limit for bikes? And then maybe a follow-on question to that is, if we wanted to entertain a speed limit for bikes, could we do so in certain parts of town and not in the whole town. So I'm guessing that's a question mainly for Jean.
Yeah, I'm really not sure if we can change the speed limits for bicycles, but go ahead.
So right now, you don't have any speed limits for bicycles. The only thing you have in place is no bikes on the trails where they're not allowed, and no motorized bicycles, the kind they've been describing, can be anywhere in town unless they are on a public road, and that's section 7303. Both of those have been in place for a long time, but you don't have any speed limits for bicycles of any sort right now. I've not been asked that question before, and I think I'd have to do a bit of research. I did see it from the county of Marin that they have imposed speed limits, and I believe there are a couple other cities that have looked at that as well. So happy to follow up on that if that's the direction of the council.
Were those for electric bikes or bicycles in general?
I have only looked at what was in the packet, and I believe they were I believe they were the motorized,
Motorized bikes.
yes, motor assisted or
15 miles on a bicycle.
So. just
Yeah,
to-
according to the packet, just looking at what's in the packet, says in Marin, the speed limit for all bicycles on county maintained pathways is now 15 miles per hour.
All bicycle.
Yeah.
So just to clarify what the town attorney said, I want to make sure I heard this correctly. So motorized bicycles are to use our roadways.
That's correct. And what motorized bicycles are defined by the vehicle code as a motor vehicle, as basically a motorcycle. And they are the kind that he was talking about, which are the I'm not familiar what this means, but
Yeah.
they go over 28 miles an hour. They have 750 watts.
Yeah, it's over 750 watts or 20 miles an hour.
So they're subject to the same speed limits as any car or truck on those same roads.
Yes.
So
yes, that's
so they're
correct.
limited to that anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
But any
But that doesn't
bicycle,
apply, so just to make sure we're all on the same page, that doesn't apply to e-bikes. That's just, I know these definitions can often get confusing, but when we're talking about class 1 through 3 e-bikes, which is what we're observing a lot of kids riding in town, there's no speed limit.
no.
It's
And-
it's counterintuitive, but they do not consider the e-bike to be motorized for class 1 and 2.
Right, and any bike would still have to follow the same rules of the road as a vehicle.
So this is where I'm leading. So the definition of motorized is what we need to wrestle with, because if it's motorized, however we categorize that, they have to be, right now, according to our own laws, they have to stay on the roadway. They're subject to the speed limit of that roadway.
That's correct.
But if we consider certain classes not motorized bicycles, that's a different category.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Jen, floor goes back to you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just picking up again on some of the restrictions. I was just really intrigued by what Marin did, because I know from what I've read, it sounds like they were really trying to address the safety issues with increased ridership of e-bikes among their student population, which in my mind is really is my big concern. Another thing they did was they put an age restriction of 16 plus to ride a class 2 e-bike and a helmet requirement for all ages. So maybe again, a question for Jean, picking that there's two elements to that. If the council were to give direction along those lines, do we already have a helmet requirement, or I guess I'm surprised that there isn't already a helmet requirement for e-bikes. Is there not?
Well, there is if you're a juvenile, you have to wear a helmet. In class 3, you have to wear a helmet.
Okay, so for a juvenile is required to wear a helmet for all classes of e-bikes.
Yeah, any
Or
bicycle.
any bicycle.
Any bicycle, scooter, anything, yeah.
Okay. But an adult riding an e-bike is not required to wear a helmet.
Only, no, only class 3 or beyond you would be required to. So class 1, class 2, I guess you could ride a scooter without a helmet if you wish to I don't know why you'd want to, but
And then also it looks like in Marin for the class 2 e-bike, looking back at the definitions, this is where it's pedal or throttle assisted. And it can get up to 20 miles per hour. In Marin, at least, they set a age limit of 16. Is that, I mean, I don't know if the council would want to entertain that, but is that something, Jean, that if we wanted to, that the council could entertain?
I've not been asked to research that question yet. I do see that other counties at least are doing it, and happy to follow up on that and see if we would have the authority to do that as well.
Okay. And then
Yeah,
maybe just
class-
one last, sorry.
oh, sorry, but I was just gonna say, he just showed me that a class 3 e-bike, you have to be over 16 to ride.
You have to be able to,
You have to be over 16 years old.
oh, over 16.
Yeah.
One question, Sheriff. So one thing I've observed is kids riding e-bikes that are just throttle assisted. So in this, what I've observed is that there are no pedals. Is that I mean, is that legal
That's
for
not
them?
street legal.
That's not street legal.
No.
So if you were to observe that in Woodside, is that what would you do to enforce that violation currently?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the two things I'm looking for when I see an e-bike is, the first thing is speed, because obviously anything beyond 20 miles an hour is going to be something a juvenile shouldn't be riding to begin with. And beyond 20 miles an hour, then I'm going to be, even if it's an adult, I'm looking at, is it safe for the conditions? So that's already something I can enforce. The next thing I'm always looking for is whether or not the bicycle has pedals, because if it doesn't have pedals, then I shouldn't be on the roadway and I'm going to stop, especially if it's a juvenile. I'm generally probably educate, but then I'm going to be probably talking to a parent as well, because you know, if it's a juvenile, I'm not going to sit there and generally, unless they ask for it, look at writing citations. I'm going to be talking to the parent, because a lot of the times I think parents are buying these bikes and they're just unaware of the laws and the dangers associated. So I try to then educate the rider, but I'm also going to try to educate the parent to try to avoid seeing that bike on the roadway again. So there's already laws in place for me to address these issues and stop it. So that's one of the things I'm looking for right away when I see them. Okay.
I've seen this all the time in Woodside on a regular basis, kids riding around with no pedal, throttle assisted e-bikes. Is this something you've observed at all?
So to be honest, it's something I've been looking for, to find a bike actually without pedals. I've yet to see one. However, a lot of these kits now are bought, or you can buy false pedals essentially that go on these Sirons. So I'm having to basically look at speed, because I can't just, if I see pedals, I'm not necessarily just going to stop it, because I need a little bit more of a reason to stop that bike. So I'm always looking for speed. And I've yet to actually encounter one of these bikes with false pedals, unfortunately, but I am looking.
Yeah, and I can say I've definitely seen a lot of these bikes. I haven't seen one in Woodside, and that doesn't mean it isn't happening, because it definitely probably is happening. There are kids probably riding through, but yeah, I haven't seen a lot of kids like I do down in Redwood City or in Red Morton, where you get these big groups of kids, and you know I was up in San Mateo a few months ago, and they were riding down El Camino and basically shut down El Camino. But luckily we don't have anything like that up here. And these are all, 14, 13-year-old kids on these bikes.
Yeah.
Okay, Jen, you're good?
I think that's it for now. I might have one follow-up question, but give me a minute.
Okay, I don't know if we have any other questions from council.
I have one.
Okay, Councilmember Eberish.
So if I remember correctly, I believe Marin has their own police force. Is there, like, realistically, if we implemented some rules, regulations on speed limits for trails to 15 miles per hour. Is that something realistically that we'd have the ability to enforce? And if so, what would that look like?
It would be difficult just because you'd need to bring a radar gun onto the trail, right? I mean, I guess Steve can talk about this.
So what I'll start with is the class 1 and 2 bikes, they should only be going 20 miles an hour already. So beyond that, there's ways that we can enforce. In terms of the trail, logistically, it's going to be difficult because we do have the BMW Enduro motorcycles, but I do know on a detail that it was a little hard for them to actually get on the trails with the soil and what have you. So it would be difficult to actually be on a trail. And then if we were to do something, we would probably have to do some kind of detail where we're actually stationary waiting for people to come by. And I don't know if the issue at this point necessitates that. However, I think right now we're complaint based. We are going out there and are looking for it. But just personally from my travels amongst the town of Woodside, I haven't really seen it to that point where it's an issue to maybe go out there and do it. And especially because there's laws in place already too, especially they're not even allowed to be on the trails based on the way the ordinance is written right now. So that can be just, don't even have to worry about speed. Hey, if you see an e-bike, it's something we can stop and enforce.
And I could add to that, like, if this does turn into a really big problem where every day we have, people on these electric bikes and they're running into people, we would definitely come up with a plan. We would go out on the trail and enforce it. I don't know if it's worthwhile at this time to try and go out on a trail and enforce that. Unless it's something that's actually, we know that's occurring and we're getting a lot of complaints.
Thank you.
Okay, last call for any questions for our wonderful sheriffs.
I actually think these last two comments were the most salient that I've heard so far. And that is, I tend to, I guess politically, my first instinct isn't to enact new laws. I think that, that's just my own philosophy, is that I'm not so sure how much that adds to the mix here. And we've already discussed that there are laws already that they have to be on streets and, they can't go on trails. So they're already violating them if they're doing some of these things. So the laws are already there, I think. But I think that there's an issue here of our limited resources. We're spending about $3 million a year to keep you guys in uniforms and in Woodside. And, as a council, we have to set our priorities, and would we rather have you have a high profile in town to prevent residential burglaries, which scare the hell out of people and really impact, the psychological profile of our neighbors when something happens, or worry about a kid who's, running down the new pedestrian trail in the Glens that shouldn't be. I would personally rather see, I can tell you what my priority is, and it may not be shared, but I think, as the captain said, until this is a big issue. I ride on Alameda de las Pulgas, and I see 5, 14, 15-year-olds just spread across the street, going crazy out there, and they couldn't give a crap what anybody's doing out there. And I'm not so sure all the education in the world is going to help there. We're lucky we don't have that here. So much in Woodside. So I think that for me, it's an issue of priorities, scarce resources. Where do we want to put our, the bang for our buck? And to me, that's a bigger issue. That said, I really like the idea of doing education at, especially at the elementary schools where the kids can still be influenced. I'm not sure you'll have much influence at Woodside High School, but you may have a big influence at Woodside Elementary School.
Do you want to form that in a question in any way?
What do you think?
Thank you.
Well, you could buy us e-bikes and we can patrol the trails. No, but we could do, we're always going to be out in the community, keeping an eye out for burglars. And we can do two things at once. If it does become an issue, we will do enforcement. And I think this is an issue that we do sort of want to get ahead of, and I think it kind of starts with education. But I mean, I just heard a stat today that they're selling more e-bikes now than electric cars. So it is becoming a huge issue. I know it could be a fire issue at people's houses. We haven't seen too much of that in the last couple of years, but yeah.
Anything else before we open public comment?
Yeah, one last question. Is Yaz here? Sorry, I can't really see on the, I think he is, yeah. So Yaz, we've heard now from the sheriff that, this is definitely becoming an issue. We've heard from Steve Frank, the superintendent of Woodside Elementary, that he's concerned about this, that, we've seen, they have observed a real increase in e-bike ridership among the students. In fact, the school is investing in some infrastructure improvements to accommodate the increase of e-bikes. I'm curious, Yaz, from your perspective, we have, bike lanes in Woodside, and that's, from my understanding, where e-bikes are meant to be. With this increase in ridership, do you feel as though, from an infrastructure standpoint, the current bike lanes are equipped to accommodate not only the increase in e-bike ridership, but also the coexistence of e-bikes and regular bikes that are going to be traveling at different speeds?
You want to answer that?
That is a very, very good question. And this is purely just based on observations, my own observations. I feel in areas where we do have bike lanes, that would not be an issue because we're not seeing the bike lanes filled up, with cyclists all the time. But it also depends on the location. There are some areas we have that don't allow for adding a bike lane because of the narrow width of the road. So that is a factor that has to be looked at, and we decide if we wanted to move in that direction, then we would have to look at the ways of increasing the width of the roads to accommodate, the additional bike traffic.
How would you go about looking into an issue like that? I guess the problem statement being we have more kids riding e-bikes to school, but also just in general, more adults riding e-bikes. I guess the problem statement is, are the bike lanes within Woodside equipped to handle that? How would you go about investigating that and kind of answering that problem statement?
Well, that would be typically you do a kind of a bicycle master plan, and that you look at the volume, you look at the feasibility of the roads, and based on that, come up with recommendations for these types of for this question. But again, based on what we have so far, I believe that the bike lanes are, especially if we're talking about school, commute to school and that sort of thing, it may be underutilized at this time.
Okay, I think with that, we will thank Captain Del Porto and Sergeant Newman. If you are available to stick around, we might have some expertise issues that we need to bring back from public comment, but we're going to open public comment, and we'll start actually in the Zoom room. Miss Ma has been having her hand up there for about 20 minutes. So Maggie, are you able to, there you go, unmuted, good.
I am there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have a lot to say about this. First of all, we have multiple kinds of trails in Woodside. I'd like to clarify the point of law with regard to dedicated easements, which is, those are dedicated easements are those that are on private property that have been dedicated for specific purposes. Most of them are equestrian, and some have equestrian pedestrian. There are none that are bicycle, but most of the trails in Woodside are in the public right of way, and they are legally accessible by all forms of transportation. The trails along the road, Kenyatta Road, anywhere you see a trail, Mountain Home Road, all those trails are legally, they are accessible by pedestrians, equestrians, and as much as we try to minimize the possibility of equestrians or pedestrians coming in contact with a faster moving vehicle, such as a bicycle, and God forbid, an electric bicycle, I don't believe right now there's any legal, there's not legally possible to prevent that. We in the Trails Committee, and I've been on the Trails Committee for over 20 years, and the increase in the number of electric bicycles being on the trail is a big concern. We've been discussing it recently. The interaction between any slower moving object and a faster moving object is never good. And it's really not good when it's a horse. So it's a health and safety issue, and it's a serious problem as it increases. And there are multiple areas look around you. Most of our public streets have a trail in the public right-of-way area. So that I think is something that you've really got to factor in seriously. You got to understand the trail system in Woodside, which is a very complicated animal for sure. But the trails in the public right-of-way are the most numerous, and they are the least protected, let's say. The least, anybody can use them pretty much. As I say, we try to discourage bicycles on the trails because there are so many people on horses, but there you go.
Thank you, Ms. Ma.
You're welcome.
We will pivot here to Independence Hall. Mr. Lubin.
Thank you. I think the issue of having special facilities for electric bicycles is, I don't think we should look at it that way. I think the law attempts to distinguish electric bicycles, which are 750 watts or less, from motorized bicycles or unlicensed motorcycles. And it's complicated by, I was looking online today, you can get this thing that has a switch that qualifies it as a class 2 bicycle that's not supposed to go over 20 miles an hour, but you can switch it over and it'll go to 4,000 watts and go 40 miles an hour. And how are you going to tell what way the switch is going? So I think the real issue is kind of distinguishing what are bicycles and what aren't bicycles. I looked on my Strava rides from my bicycle rides recently, and generally I'm putting out 120 watts. The Tour de France riders for maybe a half an hour can put out 400 watts. So 750 watts is already, at a level that's beyond what bicyclists are going to be going. So, it seems like, it's really important to try to do some kind of enforcement or education or some way to say, these things that are really motorcycles shouldn't be using bicycle facilities and shouldn't be treated like bicycles. And kids shouldn't be riding them. Even a class 1 bike is a pedal assist, means you have to push the pedals, but you can only go 20 miles an hour. Class 2 is you don't have to push the pedals and you can still go 20 miles an hour. Class 3 is you can go 28 miles an hour, but it's still limited to 28 miles an hour. A lot of my geezer group I ride with, who are generally from 70 to 94, About half of them now ride electric bicycles to keep on riding, but they ride class 3 bikes. And you'd be hard pressed to tell them from a regular bicycle when you see them riding down the road. And so I think, and they don't behave like motorcycles, they behave like bicycles. But I do see a lot of people on very powerful machines that are not behaving like bicycles, and often see kids who don't have the experience or the judgment to go that fast. And so, I don't know how you should deal with this, but I don't think it's by making a special facility for bicyclists. I think it's, having faster vehicles not being treated as bicyclists.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We will go back to the Zoom room for Ms. Hanson.
Hi, thank you. So I would advocate for an ordinance that would not allow any bicycles with motors on the trails, including in the right of way. I think from a safety perspective, that's really important. But one of the things as we talk about education, we really have a problem that we do not have signage that says how trails can be used. I see pedestrians walking in the bike lanes because they think they're not allowed to walk on the dirt trails. They think they're horse trails. And we also don't have any educational signs which indicate which user group should yield to which user group. These are used pretty prevalently in shared use trails, and there's just been a lot of pushback from the community to even have any type of education in the form of a sign. So if we want the wonderful sheriffs who have been really generous with their time in participating in circulation committee meetings and providing information, if we want them to be able to provide some level of enforcement or education, one of the things we can do, which is really relatively low cost, is to put up some signs. It's not just the students at the schools. I see there are also parents that accompany kids on motorized or pedal assist bicycles. So the message needs to get to them as well. And I definitely agree with Maggie that if you're on a trail with a motorized vehicle, a bicycle, whatever you want to call it, and you're on a horse, it is a real safety hazard. But even motorized vehicles with a parent pushing a stroller, we will create situations where someone will indeed get hurt. And so that is why I would ask that we consider having an ordinance that restricts no usage of motorized vehicles, any type of vehicles, those hoverboards, the scooters, the bikes, any of those, they just don't belong on the trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Mr. Middleman, it looks, there's a debate. Okay, Mr. Middleman takes the lead. David?
David Middleman, 280 Grandview, District 5. One thing that hasn't been brought up tonight that is always on our minds is fire. Just like a moped that crashes with gasoline spilling can catch on fire, a damaged lithium-ion battery can catch fire on an e-bike just as badly as a Tesla in a crash. And when I think trails, I think combustible material. When I think roads, I think asphalt that doesn't burn. I don't think anything with a battery should be on trails in Woodside. That said, in addition to whether or not the trails question is part of this ordinance, we should look at lithium-ion storage and charging at home. We have a section of code on gun safety and gun storage. The proper way to store lithium-ion batteries is in a non-combustible box. The proper way to charge them is actually in a charging bag. So if it catches fire, the fire is suffocated and the house doesn't burn. So whether that's part of an educational piece of the ordinance or an enforcement piece of the ordinance, it should be considered, because A house catching fire from a lithium-ion battery has a high chance of catching the next house on fire. But I do think e-bikes should not be on trails since they catch fire.
Thank you, David. Yusan, welcome.
Thank you. Hassan Farkhande, Circulation Chair Committee, Chair of Circulation Committee. Thank you guys for taking this on. You're getting a taste of how complicated this one is. It's very fascinating. I think you guys saw the very complicated handout that the sheriffs put together to explain different types of e-bikes. I think this is, as the sheriff said, the law is catching up with this one. I think the way I look at it is there's lots of existing laws that are already here that control things. For example, easements on the horse-only trails. You just can't be there if you're on a horse. So there's nothing to add there, right? That's already expressed. The sheriff's going to go out to a complaint. Hopefully it's not a big deal. I think the best thing for the town is figure out which laws filter through already and apply to the e-bikes, regular bikes, class 3, whatever, because those are universal. Speeding laws, traffic laws, etc. I think there needs to be a clear definition for residents on right-of-way versus trail versus whatever. I hear the Kenyatta Road Trail referred to in 40 different ways. There's got to be a legal definition, and I think clarifying that for residents would probably be helpful. I think education around the types of bikes that are allowed, not allowed, 16-year-olds not being on, or under 16 not being on class 3s, all those kinds of things. There's a huge complication here, and again, I appreciate you guys taking it on. I think just trying to figure out what applies, what doesn't apply. I agree, adding a bunch of new rules, not the best way to go on day one. But I think the education will help. I think a lot of parents don't know what they've bought their kids. They don't know what their kids are doing with them. I will say I live in view of Kenyatta Road, and within the last 2 years, the amount of vehicles I see going by, and I can hear them going by because they have a different tone than anything else. I look up, there goes 1 bike, 3 bikes, 5 bikes. I've also seen kids on random crap, gas-powered mini bikes, and there's a lot of random stuff people are now accepting. You know, I have 450cc motocross bikes, like the full-blown ones. I'd love to ride them on Kenyatta, and you guys would give me a huge ticket if I did that, because it is absolutely not street legal, so I don't do it. They get very mad at me. So again, I think there's a spectrum here. Start with the existing laws, figure out what can apply, figure out what the appetite is for enforcement versus education, which again, we don't have 100 sheriffs hanging around trying to ticket everybody everywhere. I suspect if you posted up on a trail, you'd probably fall asleep before somebody came by with the luck you had. I don't know, it's my guess. So those are my thoughts there. The other one I think is the trails issue, whatever you want to call it. The way I thought of this one is ignore the types of vehicles. Slow moving, fast moving is really the issue. If you're off the paved roadway, set a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, because that would catch so many, it would encompass a bunch of different use cases. Don't go below 15, because 10 miles an hour, if you can run a sub 6-minute mile, you'd be breaking that. So 15 seems like the right number. Doesn't matter what you're on, pedals, not pedals, it just goes slow, right? You can drive a 1,000 horsepower car at the speed limit, and it's totally fine. So again, I think filter the existing laws. I'll also add, I'm happy to sign up Circulation Committee to help with this. I don't think it's gonna be an overnight thing. I'll also volunteer myself. I have a weird interest in the DMV laws. I have all sorts of random vehicles I own, so I'm also happy to provide personal assistance. I know the town staff is limited. So again, that's it. The last one I'll add is, you had all the fantastic candidates in your earlier topic A or topic 1. Circulation Committee still needs 2 members, so if you wanna convince anyone to join and volunteer, we'd love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Son, before you leave, just a quick question about signage.
Yes.
I mean, it was brought up about who gives right of way
Yeah.
and dedicated and who can use this and who's not. Do you think that's a useful thing?
I
or-
think the benefit of signage is, one, the education. So those who do care, not the 14-year-olds wheeling down, Alameda, but it gives them that. It gives parents some awareness. And then it gives the town some like, hey, we've given you warning. We've told you what it is. If we start enforcing, you can't say you didn't know. I think right now you could, I know probably more about DMV laws than a normal person besides our fantastic sheriffs. I couldn't tell you what's legal, not legal in a certain, is it legal here, not legal here? Like, it's so complicated. So I think signage would help, assuming that we could get it straight, which I would imagine would be a lot of work for you guys, but it'll probably be helpful. And then it gives cover to the town if it becomes a problem and you need to add enforcement.
Thank you, Son.
Yeah.
Gotta ask a question for later.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You didn't use all your time before, so go for it.
Living on the hill, when I drive downhill on the weekends, there's bikes that go faster than I can drive my car. If the speed limit for an e-bike is 20 miles per hour, going downhill, they can easily go past that. Are they breaking the law?
I would defer to the actual speed limit on the roadway, so.
Yeah.
if There's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and a bicycle, whether it's electric or pedal or a motorcycle, if they're going beyond the conditions set forth in the speed limit or just unsafer conditions. So 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, if it's pouring rain, that could actually still be unsafe and you could still be in violation of law. So if we deem it to be unsafe or in violation of the speed limit, it could be stopped and cited.
Thank you. I'm gonna,
Jump into that answer really quickly.
yes, Hassan. Can you come to the microphone though? I mean,
Again, I have a
again, we're starting to
weird
get
interest in
more
this. Because
conversational,
the
but
class 1 or 2 bikes will cut off power at 20 miles an hour. You can pedal it as fast as you want, and then it's the limit.
okay, thank you. You are a wealth of knowledge. Mr. Drucker.
Thank
Hello,
you.
welcome.
Dan Dirk. So just 2 more pieces of information might be helpful. So ASUN's done a great job on circulation of hitting this issue for the last 2 years. So there is lots of kind of learnings we've already had on the topics. We've been working with the sheriffs the whole time. And so if there are things you'd like to send us off to go investigate and come back with recommendations, we're more than happy to. Everybody, it's been fascinating to learn about this topic, and you've seen a taste of it today. We've just spent a lot more time on it than you guys had so far. Second thing, in response to Councilmember Wall's question about what safety of bike lanes, one of the things that Yaz didn't mention that he's taken a leadership position in is adding protection to the bike lanes on Woodside Road from 280 to Alameda. So it's the kind of opposite of the other problem we've been discussing, which is you got bikes that are going 10, 15, 20 miles an hour and cars going 60. And so that's the unsafe situation there. We're trying to fix by adding bollards to do a physical separation between the bike lanes and between traffic. You can anticipate when more 14 to 16-year-olds are on e-bikes, more kids will ride those to Woodside High instead of getting dropped off by their parents. And then before they graduate to a car, right, when they're 16. So that's what I would just expect more traffic along Woodside Road headed downhill toward the high school. You know, as time goes on, these things get adopted more, and he's doing a great job of anticipating that with some more safety stuff. And we could do more of that if people are okay with the look of it in the town.
Great, thank you, Dan. Ms. Ma, do you want a second bite at the apple?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to say that the proposed speed limit of 15 miles an hour is way too fast. I know some of you have been on horses and been on a trail, and just think about yourself sitting there and having somebody coming at you at 15 miles an hour. Sometimes you can see them and you have time to prepare. Other times you cannot. And you know, it's a, like I said earlier, it's a health and safety issue. So the established speed limit, the bigger issue is the trails that are in the public right of way. Think about it. That is a big issue. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? All right, we're gonna close public comment, move to deliberations. Would anyone like to kick us off on this? Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Of course. And first of all, I'm kind of with Paul on this. This is not a big issue yet. I don't, certainly in Woodside. So I don't want to make it a big issue yet. I think there's a lot of learning that we still need to do, and then we need to understand more about where all the electric bikes going, where's the law going, and for me, a simplistic response to where we are right now would be to lay it back to our circulation committee experts to look at everything that we've talked about, everything the sheriff has talked about, and come back to the town 6 months from now, whatever. It's convenient with your recommendations of what should we be doing. The only thing I'm hearing tonight that's really clear is we need to try to keep these bikes off trails. Because I think they can become a real danger. I hadn't thought about the fire danger, but that too, on our trails that are very precious for the horses. But beyond that, I think it's an educational issue for a while. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? Councilmember Ambarish.
Sure. Yeah, this was educational for me. I think I like the idea of education. I think that's probably our best route forward. Education, especially at the schools, the high school level, and even younger, and educating parents. I'm not sure how easy it would be to do to get the parents involved in the education aspect, but that to me seems like the most realistic cure for this, and maybe even with signs, depending on cost. And I'm not sure how difficult it would be to get that going, but I feel like that would be the biggest benefit, and hopefully bang for the buck between education at schools, programs, and signs. I'm not opposed to a speed limit on the all-purpose trails. I think that could be helpful. I guess it'd probably be something worth looking into more and figuring out how it would work and what exactly could be done. My biggest concern would be, I don't know how you would enforce it. It wouldn't be the worst thing to have, a posted speed limit sign, even if it's not being enforced. And then if it becomes an issue, then I think, it makes sense to start trying to enforce it. Then it's already in place. But I mean, we have very limited resources with our officers, and to have somebody sitting in with a speed trap on a trail just doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like education should be our primary goal here.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Wall, would you like to deliberate?
Yes, I would. I'll start out by saying thank you so much to the mayor and staff for putting together this study session. These are the types of topics that get me really excited because it's about setting, good policy for the town. And so I think we have an opportunity tonight to be proactive rather than reactive in thinking about how to make our roads, our bike lanes, our paths as safe as they can be, given that we're now living in a new reality of increased e-bike usage, particularly among young kids. And so I think means a lot to me to think really critically about that and make sure that we're doing all that we can to make sure that we're keeping our kids as safe as possible. So with that framing, I'll also say I really liked the way that the packet broke down the three categories, or sort of the way to think about this. So education, enforcement, which I would also say is regulation, and then environment, which is also infrastructure. So we didn't talk a whole lot about education, but I really liked some of the ideas that were proposed in the packet. So one of the questions for the council is, should the town have a web page dedicated to providing information on e-bike and electric scooter safety? And in my mind, this is really a no-brainer. There was an attachment in the packet that showed what the city of Mercer Island did in Seattle. It was really well done. It was very informative. I don't think it would take a lot of resources for Woodside to offer that type of information to our residents, because I think there is a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of confusion about the different classes of e-bikes, where they're allowed. So I think that would be a relatively low effort, but potentially high reward education opportunity that we could undertake. Additionally, the second question in the packet was about whether the town should partner with Woodside Elementary School to offer annual education and training for students interested in riding e-bikes. I assume that this question was posed to the council because there is interest at the elementary school to partner with us on such a program. I think that would be really cool. I think that also would be a rather low effort, high reward education program that we could do with the elementary school. It sounds like the city of Burlingame did something similar. They partnered with eBike Sense, which was the provider of the education webinar that the school provided a couple months ago. So I would very much be in support of doing those two things in the bucket of education. So webpage and partnering with the school to offer an education program. Moving into the second E, which is in my mind both enforcement but the opportunity to regulate. I do think it's important to be proactive rather than reactive, in particular when it comes to matters of health and safety. And so the things that I would propose is I think we need to be really clear that e-bikes are not allowed on trails. I think we heard pretty clearly tonight that it's not safe. It also potentially could be a fire hazard. And I think our municipal code, I'm still actually confused on the state of our municipal code. But I think we should make it really clear that e-bikes aren't allowed on trails. And if that requires some level of rewriting the municipal code, I think we should do that. I don't know that it's ripe to do it immediately, but I really do think we need to consider seriously whether a speed limit for e-bikes or regular bikes is warranted. And I'd say in particular in the town center. And I think that's something that both the circulation committee and the town center area plan should look at. So I would give direction to the circulation committee to look at that. And then I would also give direction to staff to make sure that's teed up in the town center area plan program as well. I think we should also mandate helmets for e-bikes. Sounds like they're already mandated for people under 16 to wear helmets for e-bikes, but because they go so fast, in my mind, they're more akin to motorcycles or other motorized vehicles. I think that people should be required in the town of Woodside to wear helmets. I would be in support of adding signage to our trails. I think it's really confusing right now that our trails are mixed use, but there's no signage indicating how they can be used. So I think that was a great suggestion by Ms. Ma. We're in the midst of negotiating our new sheriff contract. I would encourage the subcommittee to ask for more active enforcement of regulations surrounding e-bikes. But I would say I know there's been a little bit of discussion this evening around, maybe it's more costly for enforcement. I don't think enforcement is necessarily the point. I think it's signaling that this is an issue that we take seriously. It's about the policy message that underlies the enforcement. So I think, I don't think we need to be too prescriptive other than just encouraging the sheriff to be sure to be enforcing e-bike regulations in our town. And then finally, the last E, which relates to engineering. It was interesting to me to hear Yaz talk about a bicycle master plan. That had actually never occurred to me. And when you mentioned it, or when Yaz mentioned it, I thought, wow, it's amazing that we don't already have that, considering the amount of bicycles that go in and out of Woodside on a daily basis. In particular on the weekends, the regular bicycles, and now we have an increase in e-bicycles. So I would also give direction to staff and direction to Yaz to work on a bicycle master plan. So those would be the action items I would recommend coming out of this study session.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Wall. Mayor Pro Tem Gold.
Yeah, thank you. First, I did want to thank the Circulation Committee for their hard work. And Hassan, you're right. This is much more complicated than I anticipated in kind of going through these charts and stuff. I'm going to date myself here, but I'm probably the oldest person in the room. But growing up, we had a choice on cars of Chevy or Ford. For bicycles, a Schwinn or a Huffy or maybe a Sears. For motorcycles, it was a Honda or a Vespa. And that was it. And today it's like anything goes. I mean, and I suspect that where we are today, it's going to be much more complicated tomorrow or the next day. I also want to thank the Sheriff's Department and having Captain Del Porto and Sergeant Newman here, that we really appreciate your help and all you do. The I think some of the things I was trying to clarify with the town attorney about where bicycles and motorized bicycles are permitted. And it's clear that they're not motorized bicycles, motorized vehicles are not permitted on the trails, and that the trails are only for their dedicated, if they're horse trails, they're for horses. If they're pedestrians, they're for pedestrians. So what we're doing is motorized bicycles or any vehicles need to be on the roadways. And there we have speed limits. So a lot of the things we're suggesting here, I think, already exist. And I mean, I'm biased. I'm not one who wants to come up with a big set of rules, because I think that the rules already exist. You want to keep them off trails? Well, that is actually the rule right now. I can remember back probably 15 years ago, I rode horses a lot on the trails here. And I can remember going up on trails that only horses could go on, and seeing, bicycles come flying down the hill. So, they actually go up on Skyline, I think, and come down one way. But I mean, that's a pretty scary thing to be on a trail that's about 18 inches wide with a 50 to 100-foot drop just off there. You're going to die if your horse slips down that way. Seeing a couple of guys coming, barreling down towards you. I mean, it's terrifying. So I can appreciate what Maggie Ma was talking about, but that's against the rules now. I mean, it was against the rules back then, and it still is today. But I seriously doubt we're going to get a motorized, halfway up in Huddart Park to monitor those things. I mean, it's hard getting a horse back there, let alone a police cruiser. That's probably not going to happen. I do like the idea of signage, which was brought up, and I think simple signs, not these, the whole Bible is printed on them where people are just riding by, but it's like this trail for bicycles only, this trail for horses only, and, something very simple, or give way to horses, I mean, just something very simple that are spaced out there. I think that would go a long way, and certainly education, especially at the elementary school level. I think if you teach them there, hopefully they've learned by the time they move into the treacherous waters of the high school, where I think it's too late at that particular point, just judging from what I see on Alameda de las Pulgas, near Red Morton, near on El Camino. I'm not so sure that, I hate to say it's a lost cause, but it's probably a lost cause. So I think that the education signage, I'm all for. The simpler, the better. And I think that's where we should put our efforts. It's clear that the Sheriff's Department is, when they have the time ability and the capability of enforcing the laws and going there, I don't think it should be a priority. I think there's other priorities, but to the extent that it's available, that's fine. We're going to renew this contract, and we're going to see that we have very limited resources moving forward. And we just have to decide as a town council where we want that. As several people have said, it's not that big of an issue right now. That doesn't mean it won't be next year or the year after or whatever else, but that's kind of a luxury for us. And I can tell you, there are some big issues right now that we're dealing with. And to me, those should have a priority. And I think that if we focus on education and at the elementary school level, not just Woodside, but other schools, especially in San Mateo County, signage, I think that that'll go a long way. And I think our circulation committee could certainly help with that, but that's where I kind of come down on this.
Okay, great. I'll join the council in thanking our sheriffs for being here and providing such wonderful clarifying comments, and for everything you guys all do for us. So thank you again. After reading the materials and hearing from our experts, I am definitely with the majority. I would say the universal opinion is education. That is what I heard from the entire council. And so I think broadly, if we gave direction, I think everybody would agree with exploring, promoting, and creating educational opportunities. What those specifics look like, we would leave with professional staff to recommend and implement. A lot of great suggestions out there tonight about a web page or community policing content that can be delivered at the Wildcats room or at the various schools where the target audience is rich relative to maybe tonight. And of course, the signage, I think, is also a great idea. So all those ideas and many more, I'm sure. On the enforcement front, the truth is, I felt the memo was a little convoluted, and I'm glad we had some clarification tonight about what the rules are coming into tonight, and I still do believe, and I think the majority is what I heard, and I'm in the majority, that these shouldn't be on our trails. And so I don't know what has to change or not, but obviously everything starts with education. But if there is, I think what I heard from various people, at least 3, maybe 4, is that maybe all of us, wasn't, is that motorized vehicles on trails are a bad idea. Now we have to define that and so forth, but I would say that was the other issue. And I did love the idea, trails and circulation, maybe a joint session, or I mean, you guys are a lot deeper into it. We appreciate all that expertise. What should be done? I think it might be as straightforward as simply these things don't go on the trails. But even class 1 and 2. But that's not for me to decide. This is just general direction. But I think I don't know if the council agrees, but that's what I heard. That's what I wrote down. Basically, exploring, promoting, creating opportunities for education, and then secondarily, there was a majority interest, is that fair to say, to look at trails and not allowing any motorized bikes on trails? I think I heard that from everybody. Okay, so I think those are for sure the 2. Obviously, there were a lot of other ideas thrown out there, but I don't know if we had consensus in every single one of them, but I think those are the 2 broad ones if the council agrees. Direction to staff. I'll take the 9:35 stare down at the agreement. Okay, all right, good. Anything else that anyone wanted to throw into the mix? Yes. Can we talk to you afterwards? Or yes, Thalia, please come up. We'll make another exception after again. I
This hits
talked
the
about
back of my
Robert's.
brain to let you, all the ideas bouncing around. May I suggest, Dick Brown has had some very wonderful workshops and they've been very well attended. I've been to some of them. Could we have something like that coordinate with the sheriffs and the circulation committee? We have more than one school district in Woodside and we have a lot of kids going to private schools. Just targeting this school isn't going to do.
Absolutely. We don't disagree.
That
with
would be a great educational component.
Yep. And I think that's all included in sort of the broad exploration of what's possible. You got another assignment, Councilmember Brown. Now, come on, guys.
I don't actually think this is an issue because bicycles are already more or less prohibited everywhere except for on the public right of ways. Maggie's wrong. We do have 2 trails in town which allow bicycles, the one through Pulgus Estates and the one through Unit 7 at Woodside Hills that comes over to the state land. So that's the one place where it would make any difference.
Okay, well, we'll take a look, and we'll have the facts presented to us at some point over the next 6 months or however long it takes to turn things around. Okay, I think with that, we will close the study session with that direction and move on to volunteer committee update. Do we have any? Jason?
We don't have any at this time. Melissa is on vacation.
Great. Okay, council communications. Any members want to share anything?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Yes, mark a calendar, September 27th. I've been working with the town of Atherton and Portola Valley to develop a workshop for seniors that is designed specifically to help them make the kind of housing and lifestyle choices they have to make and start making pretty much once they've retired.
No time or place yet, or just
It's tentatively down at the Open Palmer Park. The time is to be determined.
Okay, great. Anything else? I'll just mention that with Congressman Liccardo, we were looking at a date of July 20th that has now been postponed to September 6th. So nothing near term to consider in that regard. The only other thing that we did push on, because they're expecting 400 plus attendees, which would not make Independence Hall or any of the local venues possible. But Kenyatta College ended up being sort of a target place where there was infrastructure and parking and the ability to control protesting and all sorts of things. That is likely what's going to happen, but we'll have further detail as the summer rolls on. And I think with that, we will call it close at 9:40. All right, thank you all.